Kaoru is a dense, indecisive ignoramus who thought he was going to be a hero, only for him to be used and reused like a rag. He has a good heart, but it soon turns to utmost blackness because of what the wicked people do to him. And the plot twist emerges when, using his healing magic, he goes back 4 years into the past to get revenge on the ones who abused him. I forgot to tell you that Kaoru has a disgusting secret, and it's not that he has been pillaging his clients' treasures or using illicit drugs to cure people. He has a master plan that involves reliving his life from scratch with a sacred item. Come along in this story of anguish, pain, passion, and riz beyond understanding. Waking from a nightmare, Kaoru is left breathless by the same scene he's been seeing every night, doing battle alongside a couple of heroes and vanquishing the Demon King. Anna, his adoptive mother, tells him not to fret as his birthday is approaching, meaning he'll be an adult soon enough. This also signifies he'll be able to choose what class of individual he'll be, ranging from a magician to a hero, whereas all I do in my own world is go to science class.
What? What the?
While out collecting fruits, he hears a voice from within, telling him to go obtain the sight of the spirits, which he obliges, and meets with the star spirit. He's asked for his desire, and when he requests it, the spirit grants him the halcyon eye that sees all things for what they truly are. He is able to see into his life beforehand, and gets a rundown of how he lived it. He sees how people used him for his healing abilities without any regard for his life, or how everything turned out for him. He also discovers that his healing ability is unique, as he can not only heal people, but also see and acquire all of their experiences. He can take their abilities and make them his own while still retaining his original ability. He sees how he was able to resist his oppressors' hold over him with drugs by acquiring a drug resistance technique and turning on them when they face the Demon King. He lets his party get KO'd and defeats the Demon King himself, and in a twist of fate, he gets an unexpected reward. He acquires the Philosopher's Stone, which he uses to revert time back to his previous years and swears revenge on his tormentor, Flare. When his birthday arrives, so does his mark as a healer, and this time he's ready by gaining immunity to drugs through eating narcotic plants and mushrooms. When Flare arrives to pick a new hero for their kingdom, he's prepared. He is chosen, as he knew he would be, and ventures with them to the kingdom to begin his training as a hero. On the way, they strike up a conversation, and she assures him that he and she are equals, with him being a hero. He gives a false smile, knowing very well what kind of character she possesses beforehand. He is presented to the king, who proclaims him as part of the healer class, and what the kingdom has been looking for. He is titled the Hero of Recovery, which he accepts later that night. While reflecting on the day he had, someone walks into his room, and before he is able to make any comment, she casts an outfit transformation spell and asks if they can meditate together. Now, she didn't mean they would be quiet in their meditation together, but rather, she meant to stay wide awake all night, singing melodious tunes to the beats he makes when their skins make contact. He tries to resist and tells her to stop, but with a smile on her face, she smooches him, and her hand goes into the ocean of his pants to fish out her prize. When she had it in her hands, she guided it into her boat and rocked his world. After the experience, he started stealing the maid's experiences through clapping sessions and rotated them every night on a daily basis. This man's stamina has to be legendary. The day he awaited came, and the sword saint, Kureha, arrived to be healed by him. She knelt, and he healed her lost arm, which regrew. However, the backlash of his abilities struck, and he absorbed her pain and relived it as well, causing him to crumble to the ground. Seeing this, Kureha tries to help him, but is stopped by Flare and her advisor. She tells him to use a drug or a brainwashing technique so he would keep healing without any stoppage, even if it destroys him. This steeled his resolve to destroy everything Flare stands for and complete his revenge. In his room one afternoon, Kaoru lets them know he doesn't wish to use heal anymore as it's driving him crazy. He explains that the pain and sadness of everyone he's healing is overwhelming and could break his sanity someday. Flare touches his shoulder and tells him the sword saint he healed may save a great number of people, and if he heals others, he might save thousands more who they in turn will save. He insists he doesn't want to, and she agrees, leaving the room with her sage advisor. He receives tea from Flare, which he drinks and promptly collapses to the ground. He awakens in a cell, held down by a soldier who chastises him for not listening to Flare night after night. He is conditioned to obey Flare, and becomes addicted to potions created to make him her slave. During those nights, he is also forced to endure the most obscene forms of harassment. Every night, Flare came to him, poured some potions on the ground, and ordered him to lap them up like a dog, then bark orders at him while he sat on all fours. Since his mind and body had been prepared to build resistance to such things, he bid his time and waited until he could awaken again. 6 months later, during one of Flair's visits, she poured out the contents of the bottle, and when it was finished, he begged her for some more. Startled, she broke the empty bottle on his head, causing it to bleed. While looking at the broken bottle, he awakened himself again. Once that happened, he used his heal to acquire more abilities from many people, while still preparing for his escape. Some nights later, he learned that the king had left for another country with his bodyguards, and his plans were set in motion. He used the alchemical power he copied to get out of his cell with no difficulty. The whole castle was on high alert when they discovered his escape, while Flair was seen pacing up and down, wondering how he got away. He is, however, brought back shortly by Renard, the guard sent after him. Flair is relieved, but Renard tells her Kaoru said something that mustn't be ignored. Flair invites him into her chamber, which soon turns into the biggest mistake she ever made in her life. The guards in her chambers are defeated by Renard, who reveals he was Kaoru all along, using a technique he copied from the Sword Saint after healing her. She tries to overpower him with her technique, but it doesn't activate as Kaoru snuffs it out. He thanks her for the potions and making him do awful things in her name, which she tries to sweet-talk her way out of not having any of her nonsense. He drags her up and asks her to play a game with him. He breaks 2 of her fingers and promises to let her go if she doesn't scream after he breaks all 10 completely. She agrees and endures the breaking of all her fingers, but when it gets to the last one, he heals her and starts all over again. She screams, and he drags her to her around. After trying to stand and falling like a baby horse, he explains what he's done and takes his time torturing her. He picks up a hot rod and asks which she prefers, his or the hot one. She chooses the logical option, and he orders her to get on all fours like she used to order him to. He then gives her his vanilla milkshake, and she becomes very full of it. He changes her face and wipes her memory clean, while framing Renard for her death, which he planned by giving her face to one of the maids. Later, he and Flair are seen in another place with different faces. He calls her Freya, while he introduces himself as Kaoruga after clapping her again. He vows to take revenge on Blade and Bullet, whom he remembers from his previous life, and to visit the Demon King to find out what she was protecting. Kaoru, aka Kaoruga, and Freya take off from the capital with the treasures and gold he took from Flair's chambers for their safety. On their way, they see a multitude of people gathered, talking about Flair and her passing. They mention Flair's younger sister Norn, coming back to the kingdom since Flair is isekai'd, which irritates Kaoru. He remembers she was the only one who was able to figure out that he had already regained his memories in his first life, and didn't want to encounter her again. In his previous memory, Kaoru was being fed potions by Flair, but instead of drinking it on the floor like usual, she splashes and spreads it on her sensors and asks him to drink directly from there. Instead of being disgusted, the perverted woman wraps her legs around his head, forcing him to eat fish for supper. Afterward, he is whipped thoroughly by Blade for licking Flair's sensors. Things get weird real quick when Blade pushes into Kaoru, while he plays himself in the process. After finishing with that, Kaoru jumps from the frying pan into the fire when he sees roses in his tent. Bullet comes in and pounds him like meat about to be cooked. When he's done with him, Bullet apologizes and gets dressed. Now we can understand why Kaoru needed his revenge on those 3. They truly deserve to be isekai'd for their actions. In the city they arrive in, Kaoru notices that the water they've been served has been poisoned by the carcass of something, and observes the people and their symptoms. He fashions a cure from his blood and sells it to a merchant. When Freya asks why he trusted the merchant, he responds by saying he's trying not to draw attention to them and to protect their safety. With the money from the first purchase, he goes with her to buy a slave. When Freya asks why he wants to buy a slave instead of getting an adventurer, he explains his motives, which she finds reasonable. When they enter the establishment, they are led to the slaves available and asked to make their pick. Unsatisfied by what he sees with his special eye, he requests another group. When he's shown those, he still doesn't get interested. The slave master shows him a group that has been injured, and Kaoru sees the one that catches his eye. The master explains that the slave is defective, has no room for improvement, and is still disease-ridden. As if to prove his point, the slave attacks Kaoru and is driven back by the master. Kaoru speaks to her, understanding her well enough, and promises to let her have her revenge if she comes with him. He declares to the master that he will buy her, to which the master informs him there won't be a refund in the future. Ignoring him, Kaoru picks her up and speculates on what her face will look like after she has defeated the person she resents so much. Quickly rising from being the enslaved to taking his freedom from his tormentor, making her his personal assistant, and now acquiring a slave, this man Kaoru has gone leaps and bounds ahead of all men of his time. At their place, he heals the slave he just acquired and sees all of her memories, trials, and pain. He finds out her name is Setsuna, and the Imperial Capital Guards, dressed as mercenaries, captured her clan members. With an evil smirk, he decides to make her dream come true by helping her get rid of those who defeated her clan members. They leave her to rest while they go get some money from their medicine sale. When they return, she still hasn't woken up. Kaoru feeds Setsuna some medicine from his mouth into hers, and she wakes up shoving him and giving him a slap. Freya runs over and explains the entire situation while Kaoru watches in amusement. After all is resolved, he introduces himself to her, and so does Setsuna, who vows in her mind to repay him for nursing her back to health. She regrets attacking him as she leaps to take him off guard, but he subdues her without any effort. He explains that he doesn't need any collar to subdue her as he's way stronger than her. He promises to show her a way to get much stronger, which involves him shedding his clothes and displaying all of his grand action figure in front of her. He asks her to grab hold of his candy bar and lick it until it melts of all the sweetness inside. After she finishes her task, he asks her to lie on her back to withstand an intense drilling technique that reverberates through her entire body. After their session, she willingly moves toward his candy again and enjoys the candy. They all go toward Setsuna's clan and see that they're on time to save everyone. Kaoru gives them instructions and waits for the battle to start. When the Ice Wolf clan members come to do battle, Kaoru leaps in to help, declaring he was sent by Setsuna to save the clan. Freya rains fire from above, annihilating the enemies, while Setsuna finally makes an appearance, motivating the rest of the clan to follow her lead. Kaoru notices how good Freya is as a person now, and vows to destroy the capital, which corrupted her growth as a human. After the battle, which is won by the clan, they discover that the poisoning affecting the town was caused by the clan, who tried to get revenge for Setsuna's capture. Kaoru asks her to make a choice: let the poison keep flowing or heal the river. Setsuna chooses to heal the humans, as they didn't hurt her and didn't deserve it. She then requests to be pummeled into submission once again by his meat, which he obliges. He asks her during their session if she enjoyed defeating the humans, and she explains her reason for wanting them cured. She wanted to defeat them with her claws, not poison. Ecstatic in the moment and completely in love, she tells him her real name, which gives him complete access to her and control. In the castle, the king gives Renard a second chance to avenge Flare and grants him authority to go capture Kaoru. Back in the capital, rumors start flying around about a sword saint that annihilated the group that went to the Wolf clan. Kureha, the sword saint healed by Kaoru, happens to be walking by and hears that her clan's technique was the one used, which catches her attention. Out by the river, Kaoru and his girls are hanging out and having some fun. Seeing how the girls are enjoying themselves, Kaoru takes charge and decides to have his own fun too. He grabs Setsuna from the back and starts delivering her from all the evil spirits that woke up with her. He spices things up by calling Freya to help him take care of the dish in front of Setsuna, which she does with gusto. After they're done with her, Setsuna collapses on the ground, while Freya calls out for her own piece of action. Kaoru gets behind her, and to get her payback, Setsuna lifts Freya up and gives her a double dose of the washing she received. Afterward, they head into town, surprisingly, with all the exercise they just did. They encounter a homeless guy who requests to buy Setsuna off Kaoru for a gold piece. That gets a laugh, and the offer is rejected, which makes the guy angry, and he tries to attack them. He is easily subdued, and his memories are quickly accessed. It's revealed that he's a soldier who survived the battle, and Setsuna disposes of him quickly. Kaoru returns to his regular medicine sales, which go awry as the merchant tries to cross him. Kaoru takes control of the situation and makes a gain of 500 gold pieces, while ensuring the merchant gains nothing. On their way back, they're attacked by Kureha, the sword saint, who isn't surprised that Kaoru was able to block her strike. She tells him her mission is to isekai him, as he is disgracing the name of her family. Setsuna tries to defend him by telling Kureha the truth, but she sees it as a lie, and is more determined to isekai him. Freya tries to protect him but gets knocked out, which angers him and motivates him to fight Kureha. They exchange blows, testing each other out, trying to find a weak point. Kureha seems to have the upper hand until Kaoru starts keeping up with her. They keep fighting until the point where he lets her cut him, and she falls for his trap, letting him touch her, which ends the battle abruptly. Before waking her up, he asks Freya to help him act like she did when she was a princess, which she pulls off superbly, making Kureha rethink her decisions. When they are left alone, she agrees to help Kaoru with his mission and kisses him. There's an aphrodisiac on the table affecting her actions and making her susceptible to emotions. I wonder who the real villain is right now. He takes her up and develops plot, making her his forever. Now he has 3 baddies to do his bidding. What a Chad. Renard is seen coming up to take his revenge with his assigned army, and an unsettling grin on his face. Enjoying a meal with his baddies, the other 2 are in an unpleasant mood as Kureha is hogging up all the space and cuddling with Kiaru. They all get startled by a voice that calls out for the surrender of someone. They see slaves, and Kiaru recognizes them as people from his village. He knows they're being used to lure him out and asks Kureha to find out what happened to his village. When she returns, she brings news of what's happened to all of them, which doesn't surprise Kiaru in the slightest, since he already saw what Renard was capable of. He goes out to meet Renard, disguised as the soldier Setsuna defeated on the street. He accosts one of the soldiers and asks him for help using the man's memories. When he found out Anna had been clapped by Renard in front of everyone, he lost it and made his plan. Later that night, he met with Renard and the soldiers' guys, and made a fake effort to want to join the army once again. After his trap took hold and everyone collapsed, he saw in Renard's memories that Anna thought it was him that clapped her, and he decided to make Renard suffer for that. After Renard woke up, he discovered he had switched genders, and a fuming, mad Keiyaru was standing in front of him. He promised to make Renard know suffering, pain, and fear, like Anna did. Renard the fool went on to ramble and throw jabs at Keiyaru, who just sat patiently for him to finish. When he looked up, he saw some men of valor with their vision tinted red staring at his new body. I guess we all know what's about to happen. Let's just say Renard lost this round. They all got down and plugged in their chargers, even though it wasn't the same shape and size. Amidst tears and pleading, Renard tries to save himself from the experience, which Keiyaru walks out from after setting fire to the place. He goes to where Anna is, where her life slips away as he approaches. He tries to heal her as he reaches her, but she was beyond healing. In his room, his girls come to comfort him, and he pushes them on their backs and services their engines after telling them he wouldn't go easy on or in them. He ruthlessly makes their engines purr. He vows to destroy the entire kingdom at that moment. Later on, Kureha tells him that his people from his hometown would be executed at the Colosseum in some days, and Norn was back. He remembered the moment she figured out he wasn't a slave to the substances anymore immediately when she met him and made him drink her juice, just like her sister, all in exchange for keeping his secret. He also keeps in mind that if anyone can isekai him, it'll be her. On the day of the execution, everyone gathers, and Keiyaru goes there to see what's going on. He sees no one has been executed yet and sits with the crowd. However, the announcer calls for him to come forward and sacrifice himself to save the villagers. He removes his hood and changes his face back to his regular one. Not feeling the need for subtlety, he leaps into the arena, and they ask him once again to lay down his life for the villagers. He scans them with his eye and accuses them of not taking him seriously, sending those who are too weak to capture him at his current level. They all charge at him, not quite listening to his declaration, and isekai like flies. Seeing they aren't in the best of situations, they resort to threats, saying they will isekai the villagers if he doesn't surrender. He forges forward and slices through more soldiers like bread. Having no more cards to play, they begin to stab the villagers one by one, to which Keiyaru moves forward still. He tells them it's all right to isekai them, as it would make his revenge for them even better. In the end, he realizes the villagers have been poisoned, which the captain says they know nothing about. Princess Flare, being played by Freya, speaks to the people in a holographic message, disclosing the darkness and faults of the kingdom, and how Keiyaru saved her from it by faking her death and escaping from the castle. Everyone is skeptical of the princess's identity, and to confirm she's the real deal to the haters, she sings a melodious tune and performs a technique only Flare can do in the whole kingdom. Everyone cheers for her as her holographic projection disappears. Still fired up by the message from their princess, the crowd becomes a mob that lynches the soldiers and starts defeating them. Keiyaru, satisfied with his work, disappears with a flash of light. He was eventually able to save just one unconscious child. He calls for the merchant again, hands over the child to him, and gives him money to take care of the kid. He makes a request and asks the merchant not to try to correct the child's thoughts about him. He wants the boy to remember him as the one who let everyone isekai due to his incompetence. When told that the boy might come for him after learning everything, Keiyaru tells the merchant that will help him someday. He later meets with Kureha, who gives him all the information she's gathered. She also tells him Norn is on an expedition to the Demon King, which Keiyaru takes seriously and decides to head toward as well. He wants to meet the Demon King and find out what she's protecting. On their way, they have a discussion about demons, which Setsuna isn't thrilled about, and she even calls humans demons, since demons are just able to control other animals. Humans are also able to control other races, so to her they qualify as demons, too. Kaoru laughs and agrees with her, saying she's on to something. At night, he and his girls get into an intense workout, which makes the girls pass out after they're done. Kaoru wonders what new fun awaits him in the new city this time. Kaoru tries to figure out how to get a stone that can withstand all of Freya's power. He thinks about how to obtain a new gemstone and wonders what form it will take. He also remembers Blade and Bullied, whom he promises to isekai and take everything they've worked for. They arrive in a city where demons and humans coexist, and the city turns out to be very beautiful. Kaoru tells the two girls the story of how the city came to be, which surprises them both. They enter a tavern and get some food and drink, while discussing things with a pair consisting of a human and a demon. They ask the two to help them with information about the city, which they are thrilled to do. They tell them about the feudal lords negotiating with the head of the demons when the two started living in the city together, and after a little while, they all learned to live peacefully together. They further explain that both sides mutually benefit from each other without harming anyone. The humans get help from the demons with their crops and harvests through magical assistance, while the demons get to learn about human culture without defeating or ripping anyone apart. The trio marvels at the information and agrees that the city is a joy to be in. When they're being served a round of food, someone walks in whom Kaoru recognizes as the Demon King. He notices she's younger and has a different hair color, which he mentions to her later when their food arrives. She looks at him impassively when he makes mention of her being the Demon King, which he keeps pressing on about. He finally reveals the attributes of the Demon King he met before, and the demon who told him about the city explains that those traits belong to a particular demon clan, which the current Demon King has ordered to be wiped out. After finishing their meal, they are attacked by some demon mercenaries who have been stalking the demon and planning to get her at the tavern. Freya and Setsuna protect them from the attacks, although one later paralyzes the Demon King. Kaoru asks her to hire him and let him save her, which she agrees to before she loses consciousness. When she wakes up, he speaks to her alone and tells her about the future where she'll be Demon King in 4 years. She gets agitated when he reveals he's a hero, but is surprised when he mentions her name, Eve Reese, and also all of her magic capabilities. Without skipping a beat, he tells her his intentions after she demands he explain them, saying he wants her to be the next Demon King, and he will protect her. He tells her he's interested in getting the heart of the Demon King after they've taken him down. She requests time to think it over during the night morning arrives, and Eve is awoken by some strange noises. She opens her eyes to see Freya going on a joyride on Kaoru's joystick, with Setsuna also getting some shots into her pool hole with his cue. She asks what's going on and why they're doing it in front of her. All the devious master of perversion, Kaoru, says is that he wouldn't force her, but wouldn't mind sharing his meat with her whenever she's hungry. She gets defensive and accuses him of wanting her pie from the start. He gaslights her into saying what he wants to hear and stands in front of her with his lightning rod in her face. When she sees the sheer size of the meat hovering over her head, the poor girl gets confused and screams for her mother. I know that good juicy meat can do that to the ladies, especially if you know how to feed them well. He does feed all 3 of them, but I don't mean the type of food you're thinking about. He served them a regular good dinner involving food and drink and tells Eve to stop trying to hide who she is when they're all together. She gets teary-eyed while eating the food, and when asked what happened, she reveals that because she has been targeted for so long, she hadn't really been able to enjoy a good meal. Kaoru proposes his deal to her again, promising to protect her until she becomes the Demon King, and all he wants in return is the heart of the current one, which would become the Philosopher's Stone. She agrees, and they reach an agreement to end the fighting between humans and demons once and for all. After dinner, Kaoru asks Eve what kind of monster she can control, to which she responds that it isn't a monster, but a god. She explains that it is a bird, which he recognizes from legend. The bird has the power to eliminate sickness and any form of affliction, but it also has an alter ego that can destroy cities with a single flap of its wings. In other words, it can both cure and bring forth affliction. Kaoru decides he wants it and tells Eve to go tame it immediately, which she reminds him it could destroy them both. He reassures her by reminding her of his abilities. She tells him there are trials to be fulfilled, so he decides to gather information in the town. He changes his face before leaving. That doesn't help him much though, as there are interesting things awaiting him when he returns to where they ate the day before. The place had already been destroyed, and a demon bull came charging at him, demanding Eve. He tells the bull it has the wrong guy, but the bull insists it's him since his scent hasn't changed. Kaoru decides to take revenge on the bull for Eve after escaping. He meets up with the girls and gives them many gifts, which they appreciate. He tells Setsuna to follow the scent of the group that attacked them. Before they go, Freya asks them all to change their clothes so she can wash them. Eve gets startled when they all lose their clothes right in front of him. They tell her they enjoy it when he gets in the mood to play with them. He does get in the mood and takes both to bed. Eve goes outside while the tune and beats inside get higher. Outside, she barely keeps it together, going solo on herself while vibing to the tunes, which Kaoru notices. He and Setsuna go to the hideout of the group, and he uses an aphrodisiac on their pet, which runs in and claps one of them. The rest gather, and they are taken out by the duo. After putting them all in one place, the captives beg to be released after answering his questions. He does leave them there and returns to his girls. They all get a room together, and Eve begs them to reduce their activities in consideration of her, which they all refuse as they enjoy their indecent acts. Kaoru and Freya go into town to get a staff for her magic capabilities, which has a blockage. He unblocks it, and the salesman asks him to help unblock the others in his shop. After they finish dealing, Kaoru hears that the royal army has arrived and goes to check it out for himself. He sees Norn leading the army, along with several personnel. The one that catches his eye the most is the hero blade. Kaoru tries to get in close for a better look at the army, but something deters him from doing so. He pulls back and starts running from the scene, reprimanding himself for not noticing Hawkeye, one of the three Braves. He promises himself he will end Blade's life one way or another, even with Hawkeye around. Back with his girls, he shares a drink and food with the salesman from earlier, who treats them to a good meal. After discussing business, the salesman tells Kaoru how the hero Blade frequents a bar and has been pestering beautiful women. Kaoru considers using Freya to lure Blade out, but rethinks it when he remembers Blade had an unhealthy obsession with her when she was still Flare. He then plans to use either Eve or Setsuna instead. Back in the room, they show consideration for Eve by showing no consideration at all and get back to their rigorous activities. Eve appreciates herself silently as their melody calls out to her. I still refuse to believe anyone has the stamina to clap two girls continuously and hasn't fallen dead yet. The next day, he asks Freya to apply some makeup on him. All of them are surprised by the request and start making assumptions. Tired of their weirdness, he changes his appearance to that of a woman, and she obliges him by applying the makeup. After the process is done, he looks like a pretty doll, and the girls charge him, with the exception of Eve, who looks conflicted. Walking to the bar to ensnare Blade in his new form, Kaoru gets waylaid by some simple bandits, whom he takes care of without a problem. He realizes he looks good enough to get Blade's attention. He gets to the bar, orders a drink, and waits patiently for Blade. When she arrives, Blade notices him immediately and approaches, asking questions. After a few drinks and laughter, Blade spikes the last drink she orders with a potion after he says he'll be heading home. She forces the drink down his throat by kissing him and passing it in. The potion takes hold, and Blade carries her prize home, walking down the street. They are attacked by the father of one of the girls she pestered, and Blade makes fun of the man and his daughter. She throws the body she's carrying up in an attempt to finish the man off, but Kaoru kicks the man away and begins his attack on Blade. His attack is stopped short, as the sword Ragnarok makes all his attacks useless on Blade. She overpowers him, and he feigns passing out. When he wakes up, he's tied up and unable to move. Blade comes in to make him experience the ecstasy she has to offer, but when she reaches paradise, she touches wood instead of a flowing river. She scrambles down and is horrified by what she sees. Kaoru laughs at her and easily unbinds himself, poisoning her in the process. He reveals that he is a man and whips out his hammer to prove it. Blade tries to go for her sword but is immobilized by Kaoru, who begins his revenge. Everyone dreams of getting a meal in bed after waking up, but Blade gets the most horrific wake-up moment. After opening her eyes, she sees Kaoru, who already made a meal laid on the table. One would think the meal was for Blade, but little would you know she was the meal, and her guests were ready. The same type of men that he used on Renard are on display again. This time, he tells Blade to play a game with him as he settles down to eat. He explains how the men work, and that they would eat her or clap her depending on which she chooses. All she has to do is last till morning. He sits down to watch how it plays out. Choosing life, Blade seduces the men, who, never running out of juice, take her for what seems like an eternity. Whenever they stop, she makes them hard again, and they use her body. Kaoru, disguised as Flare, watches as the fight and will drain out of Blade. The men eventually devour her. With Blade out of the picture, he vows to take his vengeance on Bullied next. The next day, Kaoru is approached by Hawkeye, who tells him he knows Kaoru was spying on them when they entered the city. They size each other up, and Hawkeye offers him a position with them which he refuses, saying he prefers to do as he pleases. Hawkeye gives him some advice, telling him not to give off any actions that might be misunderstood, so he doesn't get eliminated by the army or himself. When Kaoru is alone that night, he forges armor for his hand with a divine weapon. When he's done, he enters the room and calls his girls to shoot a new movie. Eve hears them again from the other room and starts working on herself in silence. Norn is seen asking for Blade, who has been missing from their ranks. After being told Blade couldn't be found, Norn makes a bashful remark about the heroes and tells the others to proceed as planned. They all converge at the center of the city, where everyone is present, and Norn gives a speech about liberating the city from demon control. The people refuse, and Kaoru realizes it was all part of Norn's plan. As they resist, she gives the order to isekai everyone in the city in the name of exercising justice. Everyone gets slaughtered, and as Kaoru sees his friend the merchant get defeated, he goes to the body and grieves. He begins attacking the army single-handedly with his new gauntlet, pushing back the onslaught. In the headquarters, Norn is wondering what's taking so long, and news reaches her that a mysterious swordsman is repelling them. They are interrupted when a hologram of Flare appears again. She passes a message to the soldiers, instructing them not to slaughter the demons anymore, as they aren't their enemies and haven't brainwashed anyone in the city. The soldiers falter and listen to the message being passed across to them. Norn, hearing the message as well, listens. After the hologram disappears, she figures out everything going on in an instant and tells Hawkeye that Kaoru is behind the attacks and message. Kaoru, who is standing outside the door, bursts in and attacks them, but Hawkeye stops his assault without missing a beat. He is identified by Hawkeye as Kaoru, which surprises Norn. Some fodder soldiers attack, but Kaoru makes light work of them, while Hawkeye observes his movements. They begin fighting, and Hawkeye is able to follow all of Kiaru's attacks. Hawkeye uses a poison blade on Kaoru, who heals instantly, and proceeds to use his awesome move. Seeing that Hawkeye won't let him get close, Kaoru uses his deteriorating heal, causing Hawkeye to combust into a blood fountain. He knocks Norn out and carries her home. Norn wakes up tied in chains with her clothes pried open. She tries to scream for help, but is cautioned by Kaoru, who tells her it's pointless. He reminds her of her sins, how she defeated his friend, the merchant, and destroyed his hometown without remorse. He tells her he will spare her if she agrees to play a game. What's with this guy? And games, huh? When she agrees, Flare crawls in on all fours, acting like a dog. Kaoru explains the rules of the game, which are simple. If she can last till morning without giving in to the desires of the Flare dog, she wins. But if she loses, she'll have to become his pet as well. Flare begins, and it doesn't take long before Norn reaches her climax in just a few minutes. Kaoru takes the chain off her and places her down, where Flare climbs on top of her, and Kaoru gives her back shots. He opens her up and dives into her ocean, but this ocean seems to fill up with his rowing stick, as she makes tunes that no one could resist. After he completes his task, he wipes her memory clean and gives her the identity of his long-lost sister who adores her older brother, which his harem accepts completely. Kureha returns and also seems to accept this new development. Having been starved for too long, they all get together for an action-packed session, ending with Kaoru blessing them all with his joy on their faces. Eve, however, enjoys herself from the backline, reaching max happiness through her own efforts. Kaoru predicts the king will send Bullied after them since Norn will be reported missing, giving him a chance for his revenge. He acquires another raptor to make their journey easier and makes a pit stop after the rest leave. He visits the graves of Carmen, the merchant, and Anna, promising them he will make the world a better place. He heads back into the city and meets with his girls, visualizing a long and sweet future filled with many adventures. I don't know if I should be anticipating this future or I should be scared of what next this anime has in store for us. But one thing is certain, we'll definitely bring it to your screens. So don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the part 2 of this ridiculously dangerous anime.